Good afternoon, everybody. We have a guest today, a very special guest. This is my good buddy Deren from over at Sound the Siren. Deren, how are you doing today, sir?
Good. What's up, Brandon? How are you?
I'm good. I'm gonna go enjoy the weather after this. Did you hear that, Rat? We're gonna go enjoy the weather after this. That's my other co-host over there. You can barely see him.
Should see my Russian blue cat join me yesterday.
Oh, he did?
Oh yeah, yeah. My little girl. It's my
Mm.
little girl.
Yeah, I about ended up with a cat a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, but when I was at the rink working, I was taking the trash out. There's this little orange cat back there that's like been approaching me slowly for like the last 6 months. And then he finally came up to me and he was like, "Oh, you're cool." And he was like laying in my lap and stuff when I was sitting on the step. I'm like, "Buddy, I got to go back to work." And he's like, "No." And I was like, "This cat probably belongs to somebody if it's being this friendly. It's probably
Yep.
domesticated." So I didn't want to bring him home, otherwise I probably would have had a cat in addition to that dog and the Chihuahua.
It's never enough. It's
No,
never
because you got
enough.
a dog too, right?
I got a great, beautiful German Shepherd, Australian Shepherd. She is the perfect family pet, man.
I love
And
Aussies. I
she
love
is so good.
oh.
She's so smart. And so she's a 50-50 German Shepherd, Australian Shepherd, and she's got a little bit more of the German Shepherd look to her.
Mm-hmm.
So she works. All she does is work, Brandon. She's a working dog. So thank God we have a fenced in yard, and she monitors that thing 124/7.
That's an energetic dog.
Yep.
Yeah. With those two breeds, yeah. One of the things I've always found funny about Aussies, though, have you ever seen them when they? I'm sure yours has done this. If you know, they'll walk sideways, like
Mm-mm.
it. Okay, so I dated a girl, worst girl that I ever dated by far, but I loved her dog. I missed that dog. This dog would walk sideways, like it would like take its. She would take her paws and do that with them and walk sideways, like curled up in a little ball. And I'm like, how do you okay, I don't question it, but it's just funny. But that dog, I was just and had the funniest facial expressions you could imagine, like bug-eyed all the time, anytime you said anything to her. But yeah,
Uh,
like I
no
love
idea.
Aussies.
No, yeah, they're good dogs. They're really smart, great family dogs. And but yeah, she's been with us for five. She was a COVID dog.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
I got mine not long before that, about a year and some change before that all that went down. But
there you go.
so we have four big topics for you today. The big one is it kind of all of it kind of ties in together. We've got the trade deadline we're going to talk about. Um, we are going to talk about the game last night. Full disclosure, you're probably gonna have to tell them about the last 10 minutes of the third because I was out. I woke up and opened X, and the first thing I saw was people flipping off Jackson Blake on.
Yeah, it was funny.
um, then we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the expectations for the playoffs and a little bit about what transactions may go on during the off season, considering that that's become a little bit more consequential now towards the construction of the roster, in my opinion. But first things first here. So when it comes to the deadline, Deren, I'll let you lead this in here. What do you think?
Oh, wow, if that's not a loaded question.
Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I'm sorry.
No, 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 no. It's
I'm far
okay.
from a journalist.
So we were on probably a little bit before you were yesterday. Um, and so we didn't hang out until the end of the deadline. Um, and so for me, there's always context for me. I tend to be naturally a little bit more of a glass half full person. Now let me clarify exactly what that means though. It doesn't mean that I'm exceptionally happy with what happened yesterday and kind of the expectation level that was potentially expected for what would happen with the Carolina Hurricanes and maybe obtaining that elephant in the room, that centerpiece. Um, so while I was certainly disappointed, and if we're just talking, Brandon, specifically deadline, if we're talking specifically deadline, I was a tad disappointed, a tad not surprised, and um, and then the other side of me is like what we will get to, what we'll talk about as far as the playoffs are concerned, because all of these things are all tied together. So I know that that's really high level, but knowing exactly what was going on as it regards the cost, the acquisition, excuse me, the acquisition cost for these players that were available, which was very limited from what we understand. Um, and then knowing that we were going to stand pat, it's one of those tough pills to swallow. It's a difficult pill to swallow, but it's something I think also my balancing act goes, well, we are first in the Eastern Conference. We got a good lineup. I know what the holes are. I know what they are. Uh, Let's, just like they've done in the last several years, it looks like we're just going to have to roll and see what happens.
I am pretty much of the exact same mindset, except the only difference is I was a little more so you say you were a bit disappointed, a bit not surprised. I was incredibly disappointed and incredibly not surprised. Because like we were live then. I was with my good buddy Sam Wallace was there,
Yep.
and
Yep.
it was like I kind of expected this result. Now don't get me wrong, I'm happy that they grabbed Nick Delorier. I think that was a good, basically a no cost pickup since it's a conditional pick. So if Carolina, I don't remember what the conditions of the pick were. I haven't had a second chance to look yet, because I just got home. I've been out all morning.
Mm.
Um, the only thing about it is that you got a next to no cost acquisition of something that the team did need. It did need a sandpaper gritty guy who can go out there and, because we talk about the lack of size on the team, we talk about the lack of toughness at times. You mitigated that problem significantly with bringing in Nick Delorier.
Hmm.
So is he going to be out there playing with Blake and Stankoven and some of the smaller guys? No, but he'll be the next guy over the boards a lot of times to deal with somebody in the event that they mess with them. So that's a good thing to have there. Now, the one thing that I kind of tempered myself about when it was all said and done, I was upset at the time, but I did have to consider. I'm like, this is Trocheck was the big thing that it was up until the last few minutes that was where Carolina was pushing. Knowing Chris Drury, I'm wondering what type of, and I saw what Colorado gave up to get Kadri back. I can only imagine what the price was like, considering one, same division, two, younger player, three, already knew that Carolina really wanted him because he fit here when he played here the last time, and
Hmm.
four, it's Chris Drury. That was going to be an astronomical cost, and we have a bit of a barometer to that thanks to the Kadri trade. And I'm like, it gets to a point where it's not worth it. And now, was yesterday the best outcome possible? Absolutely not. But I'd rather have what happened yesterday than them mortgage the farm for a guy who's 32, regardless of how good of a fit we know he would be with the team.
Yeah, I can echo that about as loud as possible. And I think we even talked. Chris and I talked about this on our show yesterday. Is obviously Trocheck fits. There's no question he's a fit. Rod loves him, but it's that really funky middle where it's like, okay, we know that this guy's going to come in here. Is he the missing link for a cup? I don't think so, but he would certainly come in here and be a presence. He would be a great 2C. In fact, if and when Jordan Stolliver retires, he could potentially be a nice 3C. But now all of a sudden, now what are we doing looking at again? Now we're looking at a 2C. We're trying to find a 2C. So it's kind of I am glad, just like you were saying, that they didn't overpay, for lack of a better term, for a guy that's 32, soon to be 33. And like I said, and I do want to hang on this for a second, though, Brandon, if we can, just talking about Trocheck, because ultimately, the way I view this as well, and this is something, and I don't want to jump ahead with what you've got, which what you want to talk about, but long term center depth is a massive question mark for me for this team. I mean, besides Sebastian Aho, now what? you, c-
That's a
there's
very
nothing.
that's a very reasonable question because see, I'm of the same mindset as you when it comes to Trocheck. When it comes to a long term thing, top six now, stall replacement type guy later because of how good he is defensively. He's good in the circle, and everything like that. One thing to consider with it though, and I really want to know your thoughts on this. There's been a big narrative, and this has been going on for years, and I understand why it has, about how do you replace Jordan Stahl when that time does come. I'm personally of the mindset that you don't replace Jordan Stahl because players like there's not the shutdown center is kind of a dying breed. There's not many
Mhm.
left. When you
Sure.
think of it, there's Jordan Stahl, there's Adam Lowry,
Mhm.
there's not many players like that because we have to remember Jordo grew up playing before the two-line pass rule was
Right.
changed,
Good
which
call.
revolutionized the entire game. So centers were developed back then with a much heavier emphasis on you're a third defenseman as well as everything else. Whereas nowadays it's like, no, you're a play driver. You
Mhm.
don't just go out there and shut people down. You shut them down and you generate transitions and you generate clean entries and you generate scoring chances. There's more responsibility on that position now than ever at both ends of the ice. So I think that it's the wrong mindset to look at it as replacing Jordan Stahl's role because his role is going extinct. You replace that spot on the depth chart,
Yeah.
obviously, but you
Right.
don't replace it with the same type of player. And I hate to say it, but as it stands right now, the closest thing you have on the team to that at the moment, this is hard. I'm going to say it. The
I
closest thing you have to that is Mark Jankowski.
yeah. Yep.
That's not good.
No. No. It's not. It's not good. I've talked about this for quite a while where, and listen, I will say this too, that I agree with you that his specific skill set, specifically Jordan Stahl, that specific skill set that he brings, it is a dying breed. Um, he's really good at what he does, but you cannot deny the fact that he is 37 years old. Father Time never loses. And when his time is up, the way that Rod likes to play this game, they're going to have to figure something out. This is why I was actually a little hesitant as it regarded this trade deadline, which we can certainly talk about a little bit more in depth. Is I saw people saying, "Well, let's," and I'll preface something before I say it, but throw in Charlie Serrato into any kind of trade, and I was like, "Whoa." Listen, I don't know exactly what Charlie Serrato is going to be. I don't know, but I'm really hesitant moving centerpieces right now because you've got nothing. Yes, I guess you could look at the AHL, you could look at Suzuki, um, you could look at Brenda Moore, you could look at Josiah Slavin. I don't know if those guys are going to crack an NHL lineup.
I don't think
Um,
so.
yeah,
If that was going to happen, like in regards to like guys like Brindamore and Slavin, just so everyone knows, we're talking about Skylar Brindamore and Josiah Slavin.
exactly.
That would have happened by now if that was going to be the case. Now, someone like Robidas, yeah, but let's be realistic about his ceiling. He's a 4C. He's not
He's
anything beyond
right.
that. I like Robidas. I think he's a good player,
Yes.
but it's like the only mock trade I included Charlie Serrato in was for Robert Thomas, and
Okay.
he was a
Fair.
part of a lot of different. But that's a trade off there. But the whole thing about it is one of the other things that I talked about before, and I talked about it yesterday. When it comes to Stankoven playing center, I'm not saying that he can't do it. I have my doubts about how well it'll go in the playoffs. He has improved at the position. I will not pretend that he's not. I've never been 100% sold on it, though. I know you and I have talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
Another reason I wanted to get another center was to maybe put Stankoven with like Hall and Robinson, for example, and let him develop that skill set in more favorable matchups. So that way, considering this organization has been historically thin at that position over the last few years, it wouldn't hurt you to have an internal hire there, but it needs to not be in such a consequential role and give him time to like figure that out. And in the event that he doesn't, you just put him back on the wing. So you've got a quantifiable asset, a good one, at two positions.
Can't argue with that. Yeah. Can't argue with that at all.
But yeah, that's what I've always thought about that. And then but yeah, like I think that something along those lines would be maybe the best bet. And then, like we were talking about with Trocheck, as far as the long term, he could slide in that role. But Trocheck is a very different player than Jordan Stahl. It's like you do have to replace him, but you cannot replace him with another Jordan Stahl because they don't make them anymore. The
Yep.
factory's not churning those out now.
I would love to be that guy. He's had a great career. You can't deny that. He's actually filled a really specific niche. for such a long period of time. Obviously starting in Pittsburgh, he was a really great. I mean, my gosh, behind Crosby and Malkin, that you couldn't have handpicked a better option behind those two guys. Well, no, they won that cup in '09. Of course, then they won back to backs in 16 and 17, I think.
Hmm.
But yeah, so I don't know. I'm really, again, not being hyperbolic, but I'm concerned about what this organization is doing with its center depth.
See, and I'm wondering if that's one of the reasons that they held on to Kotkaniemi. And I've made my opinion on him as clear as anything.
Yeah.
Like that's probably what I've had the most vocal stance on. I I think he should have been out of here yesterday. And it's not because I dislike the player. I've had people accuse me of not liking him. I'm like, you must have never seen anything I've posted before at all. I
Yep.
have avidly defended that kid. But I also know that having a $4.82 million cap hit as your 13th and or 14th forward is not a good business move. It's not good for the organization to have that money tied up in that. It's not good for him to not be playing.
Yeah.
So I think he should have been gone yesterday either way. But now I'm wondering if they held on to him because they still see him as someone that when Jordo is done, they're going to slot him into that role regardless. I have a lot of the same concerns as you do. I feel like the team has a very clear path forward at even now at goalie, which was a question mark for a long time. I feel a
Mm.
lot better about what they're doing at that position. Wings, stacked, defense might be the best defensive depth chart in the National Hockey League down to their farm.
Agree.
The center position, there's still too many question marks there, even though Ryabkin and Serrato, both in particular, do look like there's a huge amount of potential there. But I am still worried about it. And Aho's not getting any younger.
Listen, I've told you this too privately. If we can talk about Aho for a second, um, maybe before you go into the trade deadline, we'll eventually get to that trade deadline discussion.
Yeah.
Um, my real concern, and there's several different. I wrote a few things down here. There's several different angles with Aho, um, that I'm concerned about. It's just to your point. He's not getting any younger. He's developing a lot of mileage on that body. Um, if he ever goes down with an injury, and I don't wish anything on anybody, this organization has nothing if he goes down. Nothing. Like you can't even begin to even fill that void. I
Mm-mm.
mean, so that was why tying this back into maybe potentially even back to the beginning of the year or even this trade deadline. That's why I think so many of us have been like, gosh, not only do we need a quote unquote second center, but in case anybody ever has an injury, you got to be able to fill that in, and you just don't have it. If somebody's got a name out there that I'm missing, let me know. But there's nobody in the organization that can jump. I mean, yeah, I guess can you throw up Stankoven there for a time? I guess you could, but
Yeah, that's not sustainable. We both
I mean,
know that.
exactly. So,
And I like Stankoven. I really do. I love everything about his game. He works hard every shift.
of course,
If you ask me, he's the best skater on the team. I know Ehlers is the fastest, but when you're accounting for power skating and edge work, Stankoven is the best skater on the team. If you ask me, because there's situations he skates his way out of, and I'm like, how did he do that? And and he's also got the best shot on the team right now until Nadeau cracks the lineup full time. That's someone I want on the wing more often to be
mm,
able to have the puck on his tape more, be shooting more. I want him spending, if you look at a heat map of where he spends his time on the ice right now, since he's playing center, it's all over the place and relatively even. I want him spending more time in the offensive zone using that speed and that skating to forecheck and generate those chances and generate those high danger shots and everything. That's why I wanted him back on the wing. It's not a lack of ability. It's a just I think he'd be better in that spot. It's the same thing with Taylor Hall. I like Taylor Hall a lot. I'm surprised it took that long for him to come to Carolina because I remember watching him play for years. I'm like, man, if he came to Carolina, he would be great here.
mm.
And it's not that he's not good enough to be in the top six, but he's one of those players that makes a bottom six lethal, but just kind of holds down the fort on a second line.
Very fair, very fair. I would agree with that. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
and that's. But I'm worried about a lot of the same stuff you are because it's Aho, 40 feet of air, and then everything else when it comes to the centers. And Aho wasn't even supposed to be a center; he was drafted as a winger.
Well, thank you.
If it wasn't for Rod, like he would not be the player he is.
Yeah. No, this is absolutely right. I don't know if everybody remembers that or not, but there was a time where he was on the wing, and he was almost to no fault of his own. He was dragged into the middle of the ice. You know, so
Yeah, and the first couple of months he was there, I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I was worried about it for a while,
oh
but
yeah, I remember that.
by December, I was like, okay, he's got this. It took me a little bit. It wasn't even the face-offs that concerned me because you know my stance on face-offs. I know it's relatively unpopular, but it's like I was like the willingness is there. It's the skill set, and it came along after a while. But through October and November of 2019, I was like, this is not good.
Yeah,
But after that, he was fine. After
yeah,
November, I'd say around Thanksgiving, he figured it out that year, and he's only
yeah.
gone up ever since.
Um, are you cool if we gonna go? Cause I'd like to stick with Aho for just a second, if
Yes, go
if
right
you're
ahead.
cool with that. Uh, and I want to tie this into the deadline with Aho specifically. Again, just anybody that knows me personally knows that I am generally a glass half full. I said that earlier. I'm generally glass half full. So when I kind of talk about this next part, it's not me being trying to project something that is either overtly negative or somebody trying to tear somebody down or try to tear the organization down when I say this. But I look at Sebastian as the potential next captain of this team who has verbally come out in the media basically asking for help at times. And one of the things that I do worry about is that if they do not eventually get him help, whether it be second center or, and I'm not going to talk about Svechnikov and Jarvis because that line's been really good. Um, and I do want to tie in Gensel. Be patient with me as I talk about this,
Go right ahead.
but but he, like I said, he's come out and he's said basically it would be nice if we had these, some help. And I don't know if you want to talk about Rod's comments yesterday. I don't know, but
I think we should,
yeah,
because that did concern me a little bit. And
it will tie
Rod is,
in.
yeah, it will. And one thing I do want to say about Rod when he talks to the media, yeah, it might be a little repetitive, but you know what he's thinking though. It's like
Yeah,
there's a lot of other coaches that are a lot more ambiguous and vague with what they say. Rod may say a lot of the same things over and over again, but you have a pretty good idea of what's on his mind when he talks to the media a lot of times.
yeah. He may be a little over top. Maybe at the times you may catch him when he's highly emotional. He has his, maybe wearing his emotions on his sleeve at the moment. I mean, he was saying some things about Rantanen last year that were just kind of funny when Rantanen left. But so all in context. But the reason I kind of want to talk about Aho specifically in regards to maybe not bringing in a second center or another top six oriented kind of a player that can be an impact is that if Brandon, and these are other notes that I've got, if this team falls on its face in the postseason, and I'm not talking about a, a getting to the cup final. I'm not talking about if they get to the cup, or excuse me, if they get to the Eastern Conference final in like a 6 or 7 game battle. I'm not talking about that. If they fall on their face in the first or second round or get swept in the third round, whatever the case may be, I'm concerned about Sebastian Aho. And the reason I say that is because he has come out and said it would be really nice if we had these extra pieces. And this is not verbatim. It would be really nice to have some extra pieces that way that we can be legitimate. Because the thing of it is too is if they fall on their face, the national pundits, you're proving them right. Now, are we doing it because of them? No, we're not doing it because of them. But it's almost like if you don't do something, if you don't if they don't make a serious run at it this year, then I don't think that the organization truly sees themselves as they really are.
Yeah, that's valid. I really think that, I like the analytics. I understand that sports in general has gone that way. It started
Mm.
with the whole Moneyball thing in baseball and everything like that. But let's keep in mind the organization that really kicked that off is no longer in the city they were in when that happened. Um, so that's
Mm.
one thing to
Good point.
consider there. There needs to be a good mix between the analytics and the eye test. And like this is a little bit of a segue, but this is just something that I do want to talk about with the analytics. Here's how ingrained that they are in sports now. Those videos I post of me playing, they're from a website called LiveBarn.
Mm.
LiveBarn has an option where you can pay to have analytics done on yourself. Now, that's not for people like me. That's for kids who are playing AAA juniors and stuff like that
Yeah. Yeah.
to add to their draft portfolio, if you will. At what point did we get to the point where analytics are being applied to kids?
Whew.
That is over the top. That
Big
worries
money.
me about that worries me about the future of the sport because it's like, oh, cool, your kid made it to the NHL and signed an ELC. How much money did the family spend to make that happen? That's ridiculous. It's
Life
like,
savings.
yeah, it's like I know so many people who have had to, so that their kids could keep playing. They didn't go on vacations. They basically skipped Christmas, moved into smaller houses, took on second jobs, you name it. And it shouldn't be that way, but that's a discussion for another day. But what I
Yeah.
want to get to on that is like there is a point where you have that threshold that you cross where you're over relying on the analytics and you have to ask like, hey, are you watching what's going on the ice? Because this team's been on a feedback loop since 2023,
Mm.
and you're not getting much different results every year, even with relatively different rosters, because it's like you had that big turnover in 23 24 with that off season. Everyone said that was the end of the world, and I remember posting something at 12:30 that day saying, hey, everybody calm down, and I got absolutely eviscerated in the comments, and they're like, we lost Pesci and Shea, blah blah blah. I'm like, the team's not turning into a retirement home,
Right.
relax. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to worry, because it's like, all right, these changes have been made
Mm.
and the results are similar, to the point where Carolina had a better showing in the 23 conference finals where they got swept than they did in last year's conference finals
Fair.
when they won a game.
Sure.
Like, Carolina dominated 85% of that series. Bobrovsky just did Sergei Bobrovsky things, and that was that.
Yep.
So, but
Agree.
I am also concerned about like the whole thing with like, what is Aho's threshold to be like, hey, this isn't happening fast enough and I'm running out of time. I mean, is there a better circumstance for him anywhere in the league at the moment? I don't think so. But that can change after one busy off season. That can change after him just waking up one day and saying, you know what, that's enough. And we do that in everyday life too. I walked away from a six-figure job because of how unhappy I was. And you think that they won't go somewhere else where they make virtually the same check to try and get their name etched on the Stanley Cup? That's why that trophy is so coveted. You're immortalized on it because your name is on it.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I don't know how much deeper you want to go, on the Aho thing, but I've obviously, I feel the same way, especially for a guy that I think is s- is probably pegged to become the next captain of this team. Um, and that he's feeling. I know we hear a lot about that he's an ultra competitive, super competitive guy. Um, and at some point that may eat away, at just exactly what you just said. It's this perpetual funky cycle that they've kind of gotten into. I think that you hit the nail on the head the other day, and I told this to Chris on our show, where you really said it's the playoff purgatory, and I really think that that's a real thing. It's and I will admit it. I will raise my hand as saying, um, I came from Pittsburgh, so that's hockey culture. I got used to the winning, and then when I moved here, seeing the purgatory that this the other purgatory that this team was in, where the dark ages, for lack of a better term. So as this team has progressed into continually being in the playoffs, I will admit, as a glass half full person, saying I am glad that this team is competitive. I am glad that this team sees the playoffs. I am glad to see that this team is continually at the top of the conference. I'm there. I'm one of those people. I'm admitting it to you. But as time has gone on, and as you see that this roster turns over and they still pretty much have the same results, it causes me also, Brandon, to start sitting there saying, don't everybody freak out. Could this is there a coaching issue here? Is there a system issue here going on? You've got what you said is arguably one of the top defensive units in the entire league. Can Tim Gleason not get these guys over the top defensively? Is their system wrong? So we can go in a bunch of different, angles with that. But I start to wonder. I start to wonder, is Rod Brind'Amour's not infallible? And we can have that discussion, in addition to a lot of things. I don't want to throw him under the bus. That's not my intention to do. It's not the right time to do that. But if something does falter early on in the playoffs, I have to kind of start to wonder.
Yeah, and that's fair to wonder, because I mean I've said some stuff about that in the past myself. Like, Rod's a great coach. Nobody's arguing otherwise.
Yeah.
It's like to say he's bad at his job, which is not what you're saying at all. To
No.
say he's bad at his job is an objectively false statement. Good coaches don't accomplish, or bad coaches do not accomplish the things that he's accomplished.
Right.
But the goal at the end of the day is to win the Stanley Cup, and that has not happened yet. And it's arguable that it should have happened at least once by now, and that Carolina should be looking for a second one during his tenure at this point.
Yeah.
It is fair to maybe ask some of those questions, especially considering some of the game management decisions that have been made in the past. That's totally fair to ask that, because that's one of those things where I've talked about in the past before, that there's two sides to that argument, and then there's people like you and me who have kind of a nuanced view of it. There's not a whole lot of people that take a nuanced view. You're either Team Rod or you're not. And I just kind of sit back and I let those people fight. There's half of them saying, fire him, get him out of here, take his number down from the rafters, all this other garbage. And then there's another half of the crowd that sits there and acts like he's already won the cup as a coach, and that if anything that goes wrong, it's anybody but his fault. And that's
local
not a good
media.
way to look. Yeah. And that's no way to look at it. It's like, and Rod has made adjustments as a coach, so you can't really look at it any other way. So that's my whole thing with it, is like the team, or at least what we deal with as, people and, fans and media and all that type of stuff. If we're going to have a discussion about it, which is totally good to have, because I can't be one of those people, and you're the same way. I can't be one of those people who just sits there and drool on myself and says, yeah, go team all the time, and pretend that everything is okay, because it's not. So that's the whole thing. It's like there's a lot of people that are just kind of like, be patient, trust the process. Well, we're about 18 months away from saying that the playoff purgatory has gone on as long as the drought did. Like, that's not that far off. It seems like just yesterday Brock McGinn was scoring the double overtime winner in Washington. So
yeah,
I'm not particularly worried about that yet. Like, that's down the road for me a ways.
Sure, absolutely.
But it is something that I have given a little bit more thought in the last 2 seasons than I've given it at any other point. So, and when it comes to how the team's going to do this year, I never thought they were going to win it this year. I said that from the beginning. I mean, trade deadline pending, but that's out of the way now. I never thought they were going to win it this year. I always thought the reason that they would win it next year is because that's when the young guys you have now, particularly Stankov and Blake, you can throw Key in there now, that's when those guys are going to get completely acclimated, take another step in their development, and then be significantly more impactful than they already are. And then you go to war with the army you have this year, maybe it doesn't win. You do it again next year, but those guys are more experienced, more developed, more cohesive, and then that's when I always thought it was going to happen, was next year. My expectations here are just kind of low, but that wasn't necessarily pessimism. That was just my appraisal of the situation.
I don't take it that way.
That was my appraisal of the situation after the roster turnover in 23-24. I'm like, give it 2 seasons, and then I think that they'll be where they need to be to get it done, and then still have the ability to go get another one the next year after that.
I think that, and I don't want to speak for Chris, my co-host on our show, I think that we kind of have said something very similar, where I didn't think, and Chris will probably text me and tell me otherwise, but I don't think. Oh, there might be a military plane going over top of me, or military helicopter. Can't see. But I don't think that we felt like this roster was going to be a cup winning roster. Doesn't mean you don't cheer for him. But can we focus in when we're on the Rod thing? Do you want to tackle the Rod comments from yesterday?
Those concerned me a little bit. Not a ton, but I do kind of think that, that kind of goes back to what, we were talking about a little bit earlier about how he wears his heart on his sleeve and all that type of stuff, and he's pretty forward with the media about a lot of stuff. Um, I am a bit worried because it's like, okay, laying blame on Rod in certain situations is okay in my opinion, but we're of the mindset, you and I are, that the roster itself is not good enough. That's not his fault. There's nothing he can do about that. And then we have to ask, well, some of the decisions he's made that didn't work out, if he had a better roster, would he have made those decisions? Probably not. Like, you're not giving him as much to work with as he probably would be best with.
Very fair. I mean, I'm assuming that people that are listening probably know what we're talking about. I don't have it verbatim in front of me, but it felt like, I mean, it felt like, it felt like a little bit of an underhanded smack to Tulski. I mean, I know that that's being a little bit exaggerating, but I was like, whoo, wow. I'm sure they are, but I wonder how much these guys are talking. And this obviously, listen, we talked about, Chris and I talked about this on our show about, like, take for instance Robert Thomas. You could go all in on a Robert Thomas, but if he doesn't waive his no trade to come to Carolina, it's a moot point. It doesn't even matter. If you're getting that kind of an impact player, it almost doesn't mean anything. To even talk about it. But from what we understood, despite the high prices, there were some other options. I'll give you one specific guy, Brandon, that I felt like slipped through their hands yesterday, and it's Bobby McMahon. Now, is he going to come? Is he the X factor in winning a cup? No,
He
I don't
moves the
think
needle,
so.
though.
But he does move the needle, and I think that Toronto got a second and a fourth in return.
Something like that. I'll pull it up on the TSN trade tracker and tell you, because I remember seeing that one and I'm like, Carolina could have maybe done
Oh my
that.
gosh! Well, I was like, I've been on that guy for several months now, kind of seeing how Toronto is trending. I went, he's on an expiring deal. That would be a great middle six pickup. I mean, that is a fantastic pickup. He's gritty, he's grimy, he's got a little bit of offense. To be able
2026
to,
fourth and 2027 second.
oh,
I mean, Carolina doesn't have a fourth this season, but they could have done
that's
something else. Maybe I don't know. I mean, I do think Bobby McMahon would have moved the needle
yeah, yeah,
not significantly, but it's like that gives you an option to maybe put him with Jarvis and Aho, and people might say, well, Bobby McMahon's not a good enough player to play with them. I disagree with that. You put Nino Niederreiter with Teravainen and Aho at one point, and it worked out pretty well.
yeah.
Michael Furland played with Aho and Teravainen at one point, and it worked really well. So a player with as much speed and who can chip in a above average amount of depth offense like Bobby McMahon can, he could do that and allow you to cannibalize that line a little bit and move Svechnikov, have him with like Ehlers and Stankoven, for example. That gives you a decent amount of options there if you go
Yeah.
that way with it. And then the other thing about it is, as far as Bobby McMahon's skill set, the best way I would describe it, he's like a better version of Eric Robinson. And when it comes to depth scorers on the team, guys that you don't expect to give you a ton of offense, but above average of, other guys like Stahl and Martinook, that's Robinson.
And yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. And that was where the angle that I was coming from is, as we kind of enter this final stretch of the last 19 or 20 games, and not really know, and how William Carrier and Eric Robinson tend to play their game, which tends to be, semi heavy. Carrier probably a little bit heavier. You never know what kind of injuries these guys are going to have on down, because you throw Nick Delorier in there. Listen, God bless Nick Delorier. He's going to come in. He's basically pushed Kokanemi down to the 14th forward spot. but I mean, he's not going to chip in offense. That's not what he's going to do. And he comes in with a specific skill set. I have no problem with that Delorier move, by the way. Let me just make sure
Not at
that
all.
that's out there.
No,
No
that
problem at
was
all.
good. Regardless of what else did or did not happen, I was happy with that one.
It's totally fine. I'll be really kind of curious how Rod ends up maybe kind of shoehorning him into the lineup. That'll be kind of curious. What does he want to do with him? I mean, does he want to give him 10 games in the last 18 or whatever it is? I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do. But yeah, I just felt like that McMahon move was just a kind of another wasted opportunity. I think that we could have done something to do, because listen, Colorado's going all in. So
They are. I mean, and the other thing is, it's like I understand why Colorado's going all in though, because when they won the cup the last time, they expended a lot of their prospect pool, and then they used up a lot of what they had and picks and everything, and then they got rid of a lot of their futures this year as well to make that work. So I kind of understand from their standpoint why they did it and why Carolina, if they were in that position, would not do it. That I understand. And plus that they kind of did the same thing Carolina was aiming to do. They brought back a player with familiarity to, it wasn't all too dissimilar from what Carolina was attempting to do with Vincent Trocheck. But
sure.
but yeah, the whole thing about it, and there was one other thing, I don't know if you saw the press conference or not.
Yes, I did.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I remember Rod saying that Kochekov was shut down for not the season, but for the year, that we weren't going to see him again until next season. And then Tulsky yesterday said that he was a possibility. Now, why Tulsky would be more plugged in on who might be coming back to the lineup makes sense. Rod's got other things to worry about. Tulsky's sitting there at a strategic level. Rod is sitting at a tactical level. So he's got a lot more to do in a shorter amount of time, whereas Tulsky's got a wider view of everything going on. So maybe something changed there. I don't want to take the chance of bringing Kochekov back too early, obviously. Hip injuries are very common with goalies. They can really change goalies, and they could potentially never be the same, especially if they come back too early and make it worse. And I don't see any need to do that at the moment. Freddie and Bussy are both playing fine. I'm very happy with how Freddie has rebounded from how the season started for him. None of those goals on him last night, I'm not upset about any of those, because Edmonton, for all their faults, you can't say that they can't score. So
yeah,
not upset with how he played it all last night. I thought he was good. And he's been good in games before that. When I was up there last Saturday, I thought he was really good in that game. I thought he was excellent that game. So that's where I'm kind of like, well, is there a little bit of a disconnect between the two? And if there is it uncommon? That's the other thing I wonder, because I don't follow other teams as close as I follow the Canes, so I don't know.
It's a good question. As far as the goalie conversation for Kochekov, I don't know. I mean, I think I kind of have an idea of what Rod said, but I can't remember what he said verbatim. I can't really remember whether he said that, the whole year. I can't remember if he said just out this season. I guess I would probably have to leave that in the hands of those two. But I will say this, that I think for one of the first times that Eric Tulsky has been the GM of this team, I really felt like he was more of a robot yesterday than I've actually seen him in the past. And I know he's a pretty stoic kind of a person anyway. He doesn't show a ton of emotion, and that's okay. I have no problem with that. I think he's done a decent job with managing this roster. But one thing that he has said, I've heard him say this on multiple occasions, is, and I personally think it's a stupid statement. That's me personally. When he says, we want to get the 20 best players in here. I personally don't like that. I hate that statement. And I don't know if it's just a flippant statement that he uses, but number one, you may have one of the best 20 players, meaning Jacob Slavin being probably the best shutdown defenseman in the league, from at least from what we would think. Beyond that, what are you doing to address the other 19 players that you're talking about? I mean, I just don't like when people throw these kind of things out there and say, we're getting the 20 best players. We're trying to get the 20 best players out here. I know what he's trying to do. He's trying to smooth over the fan base. He's trying to smooth over people that are maybe questioning certain things. And I understand that, but I hate that statement. I
I think it's
personally,
so
that's just me.
I yeah, no, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that that's more of a hyperbolic statement, a way of him
Hmm.
saying that, you know,
Sure.
we're trying to put together the best team possible. And what he's saying by that is like, if we want to put the best team together possible, we can't mortgage too much of the future in situations like yesterday. So I understand where he was coming from with that, I think. But that is one of those things that I understand why it's left up to interpretation. So I didn't read too much particularly into that part. So, it's I don't know. It's
So I
I
do want to
Go
comment on
ahead.
that though. And the reason that it bothered me is because of two things. And I'm going to bring it up, and I don't care if it ruffles feathers.
Hmm.
You go out of your way and you make a swing for Jake Gensel. He was an immediate fit into this organization. I don't think anybody would question that.
Hmm.
Immediate. Great relationship with Aho, great relationship with Jarvis, great relationship with Svechnikov from what we saw specifically on ice. And
Hmm.
I'm assuming that things in the locker room were really good. They took
Hmm.
that swing. They gave up some assets to get him, and it bothered me. And I was very vocal about this at the time. It really bothered me that they did not sign him, um, because of what they always are emphasizing is quote unquote fit into the organization. That's one of the things that they always talk about. Fit, fit, fit. You had a great fit. And that's when they didn't re-sign it, you could tell Sebastian Aho was not real pleased that they didn't re-sign him. And so there's that. There's the Gensel thing. So you took a big swing on that one, and now he's gone. He's not even in the organization. You take a big swing with Rantanen. We all know. I don't want to rehash the Rantanen thing. It's been rehashed 100,000 times, every which way that you can rehash it. But again, you take a swing, and this is what they talk about. Oh, Eric Polsky's not afraid to make these swings. Okay, where are these two players? They're not here. Now, okay, people will say, well, what about the return for Rantanen? We got all these, we got all these assets for Rantanen. That's fair. That's okay. But you say that you take these big swings on these players that are supposed to be fit for the organizations. Where are these guys? You know, I'm really trying hard to not throw stones at Eric Tolsky when I say this. I promise. I don't want it to be taken that way. But be careful about what you're saying out of one side of your mouth and then what's happening with getting these players in here. Because listen, Jake Gensel is he on pace for another 40 goals again this year? I mean, here we go. I mean, now granted, playing with Braden Point, Nikita Kucherov, maybe a different set of players, but still, it bothered me. That one really bugged me. And this first time I've really kind of come out and really said it, because again, they were screaming for that for such a long period of time. Perfect fit, or quote unquote perfect fit. Where is he? He's not here. So, you know,
Yeah, that's one thing that's gonna haunt this organization forever. Like Gensel not still being in Carolina. Well, not forever, literally, but you know what I mean
and
for the
can I
duration
say
of this
something? Can I
era.
say something
Yeah.
on that? And this just came to mind because the thing that came out afterwards is why they couldn't re-sign him. Oh, we had cap, there was a cap issue involved and I think that they had re-signed Nietzsche to that bridge deal, if I remember that correctly.
Yeah, the two
Um,
by six. Yeah.
yeah, and so they were saying, oh, well, there were cap issues. Well, wait a minute, aren't you supposed to be this boy genius that knows the cap backwards and forwards? You're going to sit there and did you think that you were going to sign him for $5 million a year? Is that what you thought? I mean, because you traded for him and you didn't get a long-term deal. And then the same thing happened with Rantanen. They trade for him and didn't get a long-term deal. I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to. I promise you, I'm not trying to drag up old bones. I promise when I'm saying that. But that kind of stuff, just to your point, Brandon, is stuff that I really believe could come back and haunt them. And I know people will complain that Jake Gensel I think he was 30 at the time when we got him. Was he 30 or was he 29? I can't remember.
Something like
Um,
that.
but dude, I mean, what you had a guy that you traded for that was a perfect setup. Aho loved that kid, loved that dude. Those two were like peanut butter and jelly. I'm like, anyway, and not again, try not to drag up old, old things, but um, just just bothers me.
Well, the other thing was, well, I mean, Waddell was still the GM when the Gensel thing went down, and he was exiting at that time. And
Exiting, yeah,
Tulsky,
thank you.
yeah, Tulsky got put in a tough
That's
spot
fair.
with
Sure,
signing him. So I don't really blame him so much for that. The Rantanen thing, I don't really blame him for either because there were external factors that led to Rantanen not wanting to stay in Carolina. Like, people ignore that a lot, but we all know what it was.
sure,
So, if that was, the case, it's better that he's not in Carolina anyway.
and that's okay too.
Yeah. So that's the only thing. It's I don't know. I'm wondering what the path forward is though for a lot of this stuff, and I'm sure they'll figure something out. This off season's going to be it could be important.
Yeah, I think it's massively important because I mean, I have a bunch of stuff written down on Alexander Nikishin. Um, Beyond Jackson Blake and Logan Stankoven and their new deals kicking in, I don't necessarily. I mean, it's up to you if you want to talk about cap issues, but um, that's another player I'm concerned about is Alexander Nikishin. Now, I thought he had a really good game last night. I think it was his best game in about the last 15 or games or so. Thought he was.
I think we already know why he's playing better now. He's not worried about getting traded anymore. Because I think he was worried about that, and that kind of messed with his head a little bit, even though it was
Hmm,
unlikely. And the only way he was going to go was for a really blockbuster trade.
yeah,
I
you
think
there?
he's yeah. No,
Okay.
I accidentally unplugged the mic.
Yep.
I think that I think now that he doesn't have to worry about packing up. I think he's better now because last night he was excellent on both sides of the puck. I really
Right.
liked his defensive game last night. That poke check that he put on McDavid in the first period, loved it.
Awesome. Yep.
That and you know how I am. I care more about plays like that than I do scoring goals. I've always just that's like I see someone score some highlight reel goal. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I see someone do a defensive play, and I'm just like about it.
um. Yeah, I'm concerned about him. Listen, wish that guy the rest of the season that he just completely plays, out of his mind. That's what I'm hoping. But I do wonder going into the off season, which is hopefully later than earlier. Um, I've wondered about his body language at times on the ice and not really knowing the messaging happening behind the scenes with either Rod or Gleason because I wouldn't know. Um, and wondering um, if he wants to be here.
Yeah, I mean the thing is though with a lot of European players, even if they're from Russia and everything, they're kind of stoic as is. Like Teravainen, for example. I don't
Sure.
think I ever saw that dude smile. Same thing. Victor Rask would score goals and just skate back to the bench like nothing happened. Like that was the most stoic guy I've ever seen in my life. The dude just did not care. It was like he had the same facial. He was like Darth Vader. He had the same facial expression no matter what was going on. So I think maybe that's part of it. You do have some Russians that are a little bit more emotional. Ovechkin, for example, is incredibly emotional. Like you can really see it on his face. But Nikishin body language and everything like that did seem a lot better last night. I do remember
Yes.
seeing him smile a few times on the bench and everything like that. And he definitely had some swagger on him after he did that poke check on McDavid. You could see it on him. It's like you ever see like we're both pet owners, so it's like when an animal does something they're really proud of themselves and they're like walking around like that's what I saw him doing after that poke check. It's like it's like I had a cat growing up that he had this toy mouse that he would pretend that he killed it and walk around with it in his mouth like a prize. Um, but it's like I think I'm not so much worried about that anymore about him potentially being somewhere else or not wanting to stay in Carolina. And then not to mention
Okay.
I think
Good.
that he knows that his role is going to increase probably starting next season. And then you've got the Goss to spare thing, which we don't know the extent of whatever injury happened to him last night, that
Right.
role might increase now. The one silver lining about this, if you will, when I saw Nikishin and Nystrom playing together, I
They were
really
good.
like that pair.
Yeah.
With Niestrom's probably going to be the first guy called back up. If Riley is not the one in the lineup, I imagine that. I mean, Niestrom's going to get recalled either way, I think, unless Ghost's injury just isn't serious at all and it's just like day to day, then they'll just put Riley in and be done with it.
Yeah.
I think seeing him play with Nystrom, who is a true safety valve, will allow Nikishin to open up that offensive puck moving side of his game. And then that'll further have the positive momentum going that he built when he played last night. So, yeah, I was just concerned about that a little bit myself. I'm not so much anymore, but I don't think he's going anywhere. As far as like contracts for him and everything, cap situation considered, I think it'll be a bridge. Um, it's like he's making league minimum now. You could bump him up to like 2.2, something along those lines, and then give him a good payday in a couple of seasons. And because he's already 24, so like the next long term deal you signed him for, that's basically the entirety of his career at that point, when he would be at his most impactful and when he would be at his peak and everything like that. I think that's when that would occur.
So I have a question for you
Mm-hmm.
in regards to, and I got to give props to my co-host for saying this, because I'm really curious about Chris, is how maybe a team may decipher. You've got four left-handed defensemen with two right-handed defensemen. Your number one guy is probably Jacob Slavin. Your number two guy is probably Keandre Miller, because they're lefties. And we've obviously heard about him being Nikishin being able to play on his offside. I don't know if that's a preferable thing. You would probably be able to speak to that a little bit more than I would be able to. But if he's more comfortable on his natural side, do you think the organization is willing to put a $20 million on the left side of the defense?
I think so. I
Okay.
think so. And as far as like the long term plan for Nikishin, considering that the season started with four left handed defensemen
Hmm.
and two right as far as your regular six defensemen and everything like that, I think the plan was. We'll see if this comes to fruition. I think the plan was always to have Nikishin to Slavin's right. I really do, because okay, so someone like Slavin being on the left side, it's a little bit more essential to the way he plays the game to be that much more effective. That's not to say that Slavin wouldn't be effective on the other side. We've seen him do it in a pinch, and he can. But when it comes to the way that Slavin defends versus how Nikishin defends, Slavin is more of a separate the puck from the player guy. He likes to use his stick for things. He likes to be able to angle people off and poke check them and everything like that. That's a lot easier to do on the left side of the ice when you're talking about having this hand out to keep somebody from getting to the middle of the ice and you're on the left side of the ice. With Nikishin, he's more of a, Slavin's gaps are really technical and everything like that. You go where he wants you to go. He makes you do stuff on his terms. Or I'm sorry, Slavin does that. Nikishin, on the other hand, he's more of a separate the player from the puck. That is all to say that he is physical and he prefers making body contact, having really aggressive gap control. And when he gets possession of a puck, he's not nearly as conservative with the management of it as Slavin is. That's to be expected because that's the type of player that Nikishin is. So, and we saw some of the same stuff with Orlov at times where he played the offside last season and season before, and I liked him over on that side a little bit more, to be honest. That's actually common with European defensemen to play on the offside, whether it's Russia, Sweden, whatever. Rasmus Dahlin is an example of that. So
Mm-hmm.
I think the long-term plan, why they were okay with going with that and dumping that much money into the left side, is because I think Nikishin is eventually seen as being that guy on the right. Gossesbear talked about it at times when he's on the right, when they do the interchange and everything like that. So I do think that that's the plan. Have him on that side, have a true top pair, and let them kill penalties together.
Okay.
Let them spend all their 5-on-5 minutes together. Because what side of the ice Nikishin plays on does not affect him to the degree that it does Slavin in terms of his
Mm-hmm.
effectiveness in his role.
Okay.
He's
Yeah. I
just
mean,
not
that's
ready to do it yet.
yeah. So I want that's the other question. I don't want to hang on Nikishin too long if you unless you want to move on.
Oh no, no, you go right ahead, bud. No, we're good. We got nothing but time.
I was just, kind of curious that the mantra, at least with most defensemen that we hear coming into the NHL, is that they need time to develop,
Mhm.
maybe for lack of a better term, or to be able to play at the speed and the physicality that this game is played at the NHL level. That's why they say, and I guess plus the man-on-man system, I guess there's some nuancy things that it just takes time. So in your point of view, what kind of time frame do you think? I mean, is next year a good time frame that he should have those feet wet enough that he should be able to jump up with Slavin?
Next year, yeah, I think that's reasonable. See, I was hoping it would go a little bit faster than that, and they'd be doing that by the playoffs. It doesn't look like that's going to happen now.
Hmm.
That being said, if Gostisbehere's injury is bad, you might need to consider accelerating that timeline and having them do it now. Like that's one thing that you could do, or you can just put him with Nystrom in the event that that's what happens.
Yeah.
Um, I do think that by next season that is realistic. It would probably be heavily dependent on what they do in camp. There was a lot of stuff to experiment with this camp because you brought Miller in, you brought Nikishin in, so you had some, two of your defensemen being different than the ones you had before. That's a big change.
Sure.
Whereas you go to camp next year, you're probably having the exact same six guys that you have now as far as your six defensemen that are your regulars. So making a swap like that in house is a lot less complicated, and you can do it from day one, see how it works out. If it doesn't work out, you do a different configuration. It's no problem. So I think that him doing that by next season is realistic. I won't say how likely it would be because I don't know. That's
Right.
something you have to see in practicality to know if it's going to work. I personally think that it is totally realistic to happen though. Now, like I said, depending on the extent of whatever's going on with Gostisbehere, you might see that sooner from the standpoint of, Nikishin's made improvements, but he still has some defensive lapses. He still has
Yeah.
some difficulty managing the puck at times. One of the ways you mitigate that is putting him with Slavin. So I've always wanted that. I just knew that it wasn't going to happen just yet because he's got to figure some stuff out first.
So let's use that as a segue to talk about the off season. What do you think?
Well, depending on the season, it really heavily depends on how the playoffs go, I think.
Okay. Hmm.
I'm hoping that, see, one of the good things about the off season, you have a little bit more time and versatility to be able to make moves. One of the biggest things I don't like about what the NHL is doing now is the decentralized draft, especially after
Yeah.
they had the coolest draft ever at the Sphere, but they decentralized it.
Yeah. In
And
Vegas.
yeah, me, Matthew, and Sam Wallace were all live when they did the decentralized draft last year. We were live, I think, for 4 hours and 24 minutes. That was just the first round. Before Carolina made their pick, the Ducks picked McQueen. They had him at Disneyland with Lightning before the
Yeah.
Hurricanes
Yeah.
pick even came up, which they, of course, traded back. And then the
Yeah.
Blackhawks drafted the guy that I wanted to get right after that at 29 with Mason West. So I think that, see, and here's one other big thing. Shane Wright's been talked about a lot. Shane
Yep.
Wright's still a project.
I've talked
He
about him. Yep.
he goes further up the trade board if you're talking about the offseason as opposed to the deadline. Because then
Right.
you have time to get him in camp, get him acclimated, all that. So taking a guy like Shane Wright and bringing him in, as far as like players you would want to bring in, he goes a lot quicker up the list
Hmm.
at that point because you have the season to get him where he needs to be. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a move like that over the summer. So
Yep.
maybe that happens, something along those lines. And I like Shane Wright. I understand that he's had some difficulty development and everything, but I think that there's a really good player there. The
Yep.
skating is definitely there. He's very talented.
Agree.
I think a lot of the stuff with him is more mental, that there's a lot of situations that he's in where he doesn't exactly know what to do, like kind of on the defensive side of things. And once you sort out your defensive side of things, other things come, especially if you're playing for the Hurricanes. Like, okay, I got the puck back. Now what do I do? And
Right.
then your vision gets better and everything like that. So I see a move like that being something that potentially happens. I know Jason Robertson's been talked a lot with the
Hmm.
cap issues that Dallas has. I
Yep.
personally do not believe that Jason Robertson is going to become available. I think they're going to move enough out to get him taken care of because they don't want to lose him. They love him.
Would
So
you? I wouldn't want to lose him.
I wouldn't either. So it's like I'm a firm believer that Dallas is going to find a way to keep Jason Robertson. So if he does become available, that's someone Carolina's got to look at. If
Absolutely.
Toronto decides to tear it down, I don't think Matthews is very realistic. It would be great. I think Matthew Nyes might maybe be someone that could get looked at there. That would also be a haul, obviously. But
Yep.
as far as realistic moves, something along the lines of Shane Wright,
Hmm.
you know, who would be a bit of a project. But so was Kokaniemi. Ultimately, he didn't really work out the way that we hoped he would. But the difference is, and I love Kokaniemi, but he can't skate worth a damn. Shane Wright's a good skater.
He's a great skater. Yep. It's a good point.
But
Yeah, we've talked about him quite a bit, on our show too. I just think that again, he's when we talk about fit, just from the eye test perspective, Brandon, that's the kind of player I see from the eye test. I've seen a limited view of his analytics. He's a center of the ice player.
mhm.
Um, just looking at fit, that would be high on my board to be looking at, especially if he's considered to be a depressed asset in Seattle. No idea what Seattle wants to do. I mean, I think that are they in the first or the second wild card spot? I can't remember
I'll tell you
right
in two
offhand.
seconds.
Um, but they're close. But he's been kind of, I've heard that there's a lot of issues with him. I don't know. I've also actually heard that he's got a little bit of an attitude.
See,
That's
I don't worry about that so
I
much. And
no, I don't either. I've just heard that, so I can't confirm it. So
well, there's two reasons I don't worry about it. One, a lot of times it's exaggerated, i.e., Tony D'Angelo.
yeah, that's
It's
fair.
like Dougie Hamilton ended up being a good fit here, and people were, there was nothing but negativity around his personality just because he liked going to museums or something. Which, that's cool. I wish I had been able to get in touch with him because when I lived up there, I would have taken him to the Smithsonian Aviation Museum, and I would have been like, I can tell you about everything in here. So I've been like, it's like, what's this? Oh, well, this is an F-14 Tomcat. This one in particular is a D model, and then about 3 hours later, he'd be like, all right, bro, that's enough. But
Yeah.
and fun fact, the one in the Smithsonian was the last F-14D that was landed on an aircraft carrier when they were retiring them.
Hmm.
But
Awesome.
um, yeah, like that I love planes, as you know. Um, but that's one reason I don't worry about it. Number two, I'd rather have somebody. We had a saying in the military: I'd rather have someone who I have to rein in than someone I have to get more out of.
I agree.
If Shane Wright is one of those guys that you have to rein in as opposed to get more out of, I'll take that 10 times out of 10.
Sure.
A lot of that's been talked about with Ryabkin and why his draft stock fell so much.
G-
So,
Kid's got
okay,
that
that's fine.
little love that
Take
little
it.
gritty grime out of him.
I like what
The
I've seen out of him so far. He's a long way off, but I
long way.
like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I love that gritty side. Totally agree with you on that. Absolutely. So what do you so if you said contingent upon the playoffs, kind of what might the direction that the organization could go contingent upon how they do. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of availability, Brandon, for again, we talk about going to the second center
Hmm.
position. I mean, every contending team wants it.
Hmm.
I mean, actually, every team, forget the contending, every team wants, center depth. So, if you're the Hurricanes, I mean, besides maybe Wright, are there any other? And I brought up Charlie Serrato earlier. I think he's still in college. I don't think that he's going to jump into the NHL next year by any stretch of the imagination. But who else are you potentially looking at?
You could circle back to Trocheck, I believe, because maybe his asking price will be lower since,
Yep.
it's kind of like if you want a car on the lot and it's the last one there, and they're like, hey, if you don't get it now, it might be gone when you get back. I've actually experienced that with a Subaru Impreza WRX STI. I'll talk about that another time. Actually, I'll tell that real quick because it's funny. So I was playing at the rink on Fort Bragg on a Thursday afternoon. And I'm in the locker room getting dressed, and my phone rings. It's my dad, and he works at a Mazda dealership. And he's like, "Hey, there's a 2015 Subaru, or no, it was a 2013 Subaru Impreza WRX STI hatchback and WR Blue Mica here." And I was
Okay.
like, "For real?" And he's like, "Yeah, because I always wanted that car. I love
Yep.
that car. That's my favorite one other than the 2005 Corvette Z06, and there's a few others. But I
The
always
little
wanted that.
hatchback, right? Hatchback.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yep.
love the hatchback ones." And I was like, "Okay, I'd always wanted that car." And I was like, I'm gonna get that one because I drove one time and I was like, I love this. I have to get one of these. So I was like, after I get off the ice, I'll come get it because I already paid for my ice time. And I got done skating. I took the quickest shower I could, and I got over there. I walked in there, and my dad's like, it got sold already. I'm like, you gotta be. But in 2 hours, 2 hours
Yeah.
it was gone. So you remove that type of dynamic when you're talking about making transactions in the off season. So then that gives you more time to talk. There's not really as much of a time limit on it and everything, not an actual tangible one. A trade deadline is a hard deadline. That's a tangible thing. Drury might sit there and say, well, there's all these other teams interested. You might want, and then, Carolina, Tulski, and all them could potentially call that bluff because I think that's what it would be at that point.
Mm.
So, and his prices probably went down because the demand is not as immediate. So that's one thing you could do. Second thing here, and I'm not saying that this would happen, but there is one thing that we did see out of Stankoven in the playoffs last season is his ability to elevate his game in situations like the playoffs. He was an animal in the regular season and became more of an animal in the playoffs. He could do that again. And he could do it to the point where you say, okay, legitimately, and then there's almost an across the board consensus at that point. Okay, maybe Carolina doesn't need another center. If he can go in the playoff, because the playoffs are the big concern, not the regular season. He's been fine in the regular season. If he goes and he elevates his game in the playoffs, they might just say, you know what? Don't need to do that. Then that's when you start talking about pivoting to, in the event that he becomes available. I'm not saying that he would. That's when you start talking about pivoting to Brady Tkachuk, maybe, which I would absolutely love to have him in Carolina. That's when you can say, all right, that problem is I don't like to say problems are solved because they never are, but you could say that's mitigated. Let's go look at improving the team in another way. So, I mean, the goaltending could maybe use a little bit of shoring up. If Wallstedt's name is out there, which I don't think it will be by then, I think they'll get him.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Accidentally unplugged my microphone again. Then, there's that. There's a bunch of different ways that can go. I think one of the biggest things is dependent on how far they get in the playoffs and how well a player like Stankoven in particular plays at that position. That's one thing where I've like I took some time after the deadline yesterday. Part of the reason I didn't do any more streams is I sat there and I wanted to think and think and think and think. I was like, because there's a lot more to this. We haven't seen what the asking price was that Drury had for Trocheck yesterday. I have a feeling we're going to see it and everyone's going to be like, okay, never mind. I really think that will come whenever we see whatever the proposed package was that he wanted.
Yep.
And then I thought about it. I'm like, Stankoven like doubled his game in the playoffs practically last season. He could maybe do that again, and then that discussion might just be over.
Listen, I think that we would all love that. I think that we would all love that. I still think, in addition to that, of course, I'm hoping that that's the case with Stankoven because I think most of us are big fans of him, and the way that he plays. He's like kind of like a little pit bull. That's kind of the way I kind of view him. He works really hard, but it would be also still, I hate bringing up that name of Mark Jankowski, but his expiring deal, I for the love of God, please, guys, I could actually see them looking at potentially re-signing him to another year deal. I know it's funny, but that's where I would be like, I would be targeting a young player like a Shane Wright without rehashing, because he could grow with this group. And then I don't want to say the window's perpetually open because it's not, but if you continue, this is the challenge I have sometimes with this, Brandon, you may be able to speak to this, is, and this is where my glass half full kind of comes into play, is this is why I'm glad I'm going in a bunch of different directions. This is why I'm glad that they didn't re-sign Brent Burns. They didn't re-sign Brady Shea. They didn't re-sign Brett Pesci, because I also think despite that window, as a general manager, you've always got to be continually understanding not getting old. That's a challenge. That's a challenge, because then you can sacrifice the experience and old for younger players, but then they lack the experience. So it's just kind of this caught in between. But that's why I would be targeting a player like a Shane Wright in the offseason, assuming Seattle wants to move on from him, or they feel like that maybe he could be beyond development or beyond help. Because again, if I look at it, I really would prefer not to have a Mark Jankowski in this organization next year. I just want them to be able to move on. But I think that if you can get Shane Wright in here, you put him at a 4C, and Logan Stankoven continuing to develop as you say. First of all, now you got two righties in the middle of the ice, and I just like
Mhm.
I like the youth and I like that aggressiveness. That's the kind of move I'd like to see. I don't know, with Blake Stankoven's deal, their deals kicking in, and then having to sign Nikishin, whatever that number is, you're gonna have a limited amount of money unless unless either they buy out Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and I think that you can buy them out before they're 26 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think he goes into the 1/3 buyout window next season.
Okay.
I think I'd have to
So I
look
think
at
it's
Puckpedia.
before you turn 26 years old. And I
Hmm.
think he turns 26 and after July 1st. It's like July 5th or 6th or something like that. So I'm kind of wondering, I don't know if Dundon is a fan of that, but if you're going to keep Kokaniemi, you're just going to have to just deal with it, or you're just going to have to just move on from him and bring in a kid like a Wright, that can start filling that center depth.
Hmm.
Um, because I don't know, I just look at it. If they keep Kokaniemi, it's been pretty clear to me that I know that he's probably well liked in the locker room for good reason. He probably doesn't complain, you know, I- but if he stays, he's just not going to play.
Well, I mean, Dundon doesn't like dead money, but $4.82 million of cap sitting there, being a 13, 14 forward, is the epitome of dead money. He's conducted himself very well through all
Oh
this.
yeah,
He really has, because like I've always been kind of more on his side than Rod when it comes to him. Um, and a lot of the fans, like, it's like he's barely been in the lineup and he still gets blamed for stuff, and I don't understand that.
yeah,
And then people talk about how bad he played the other night, and I'm like, well, he's not been playing. What do you expect? Like,
right.
it's I do think it's time. I want him to go somewhere where he can play, because I think he's a good player.
I do too.
Um, and I think that if he goes somewhere else, I think that's what would be best for everybody. I don't want to see him go, because I've always liked him. But it's like I got him on my Stadium Series sweater because I thought of how, because I had that sweater already, and I decided, I'm like, I'm gonna pick somebody out who I thought played well tonight and put them on it, and that was him, because he had 3 points that night if I remember correctly. Um,
I think you're right. Oh
yeah,
yeah, I think you're
he
right.
scored he scored the first goal. He had an assist on Tara Vinan's goal and one other one. What was the other one? I'm pretty sure he factored in on three of those four. No, I take that back. He had 2 points. Nate just had three, because my
Okay.
friend Jeremy got Natchez on his Stadium Series sweater because of that.
Yeah,
Um, so I think that's something that has to be considered. I hate when players get bought out in general. It's just kind of an unnerving thing for me to see, because a lot of times people are like, oh, they suck. I'm like, no, they don't suck. It's just stuff didn't work out. So, and I hate seeing that happen to him in the event that they go that route. But like we were talking about before, Jordan Stahl's only got 1 year left, and Jesperi Kotkaniemi is more likely to replace that player, not with the same skill set, but he's more likely to do that than you just pulling someone off the street and doing it. It's like I see all these people all the time say this stuff. Oh, I'd have 100 points if I played with Nathan McKinnon too. No, you wouldn't, because you couldn't keep up with him. There's very few people on earth who can do that. Martin Natchez is one of them. So, it's like, oh, well, this player's a merchant of this player's a merchant of that. I'm like, well, if you think about it, they're all merchants of somebody else. Nobody
yeah.
does it alone. So it's it's a tough spot to be in. Shane Wright does look appealing to me, as far as maybe making moves for that and everything like that. But like I said, Stankoven could completely go off and neutralize that discussion entirely. That's totally a possibility. Do I think that's going to happen? No, but I, I could see it being something that makes that not a problem anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly hope so. Not only just for him personally, but obviously for the organization.
Hmm.
Because then you kind of squash that argument, long term. And I'd prefer that argument just get, closed. I would prefer that chapter, you know,
Yeah,
I would prefer
it's
that chapter gets closed with this organization. And so I hope that, I do have, I know we're in an hour 20, but I do want to ask you
mhm.
something specifically. I don't know if you've given this a lot of thought or not, but when you have two young players that are gonna, like a Blake, well, let's just say Jackson Blake, Logan Stankoven. their deals haven't kicked in yet, and I think Blake is going to be due like 5.1 something million or whatever the case may be. I don't want to get into the number, but and with all the no trade clauses, I know you talked about this the other day, is the clauses, because what it ends up doing is kind of depressing the value or depressing the AAV of the contract a little bit, because it gives them protection. Could you see a scenario where they move Blake before July 1st?
I hope not.
Okay, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, no. I personally don't. And there's two reasons for that. One, I think that they like him and they want to keep him. And he's a good player, and I think that they should too. Minus like something blockbustery. Um, Two, that would really put a bad stain on the organization to do that to somebody and
Hmm.
maybe deter them from signing here, especially signing team friendly deals in the future.
Sure. Good
So
point.
that's the two reasons I wouldn't want them to do that. Now, if he'd gotten traded during the season, that would be different. But if you do it at the last minute, right before his extension kicks in, that's going to raise some eyebrows.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so that I don't see happening. That would be free agency suicide if they did that. So I don't think that they will. And any trade that I would include Blake in is for like a blockbuster. I'm not sending Blake out to get Trocheck or Shane Wright or anybody like that. That's when you start talking about Robert Thomas and guys like that again. And I don't think a trade like that is going to happen. And specifically in regard to Robert Thomas, one of the reasons why it's not going to happen is because if you saw all the capital that they stacked with what trades they did make, they don't need to trade him anymore to
Not
accelerate.
anymore. You build
No,
around
they
that guy.
yeah, now you got enough to where that team's competitive again. Between what they already have and then what they picked up yesterday, now you have enough to build that team back up in 2 to 3 seasons, and he's still there. So,
Yeah.
like, they could be squeaking in the playoffs in 2 years if they draft well and manage their assets well and develop well and everything like that. So, that's like, you don't even need to worry about that anymore if you're them. So, he's probably off the table for good now. If Washington really nosedives, you'll have to pay the in division tax, but Dylan Strome is someone I would like to look at. I've always liked him.
Oh my
But
gosh.
till this day, I am absolutely baffled that Chicago didn't at least qualify him so they could get something for him through trading him. I cannot believe they let him walk for nothing. He's a great player. And he showed that in Washington. So because they really needed him with Backstrom and Kuznetsov being having more of their careers behind them than ahead of them, and that worked out well for them. Um, Maybe him. I don't see that happening either. um, but yeah, like I personally don't see any scenario where they do that to Blake or anybody else where they ship them right before the extension kicks in.
And the reason I'm kind of asking that is, probably a multi-layered question, is the other elephant in the room is Bradley Nadeau. Is does where is he gonna squeak into this lineup next year?
Well, the good news about that, I don't know if you saw the video me and Matthew did about him. The defensive side of his game has come along a lot in
Uh-huh.
the American League. That's one of the reasons why I'm not particularly worried about, say, that was one of the reasons why, and I know we talked about this a little bit offline, was with Bobby McMahon. He's strictly a rental. Don't worry about signing him. Don't even worry about it. Let him go. That's a spot for Nadeau later in the future that he could potentially have. Um, I think a lot of that depends. They're gonna have to move somebody out to get Nadeau in. Um, how that goes down, I don't know.
Right.
But there is such a thing as over marinating and overcooking someone in the minors. And I think you're getting kind of close to that territory with Nadeau. He's one of, if not the best players in the American League right now. So
Yeah.
it's that does have to get sorted out, but I honestly don't have any idea what it looks like. But I would like to see him sooner rather than later. And we might see him in the postseason considering, injuries and stuff like that. He'll be one of the black aces for sure, probably the
Mhm.
top one.
Sure.
So I'm hoping that they'll find a way to get him in. I just don't know what that looks like because for the Canes forward deficiencies, they're all at the center position. Him, he's got a stacked depth chart to work his way through.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge. The way I kind of look at that is Nadeau being the over marinating. I think that there's a lot of there's a couple of players that I'm thinking about in the American League, specifically with Chicago, that I I feel really bad for these guys sometimes because, I know some of these guys are never going to taste the NHL, though, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, being an AHL player is not anything to ever be ashamed of, ever.
They make pretty good
Um,
money nowadays too. They don't make
yeah,
NHL money, but they make pretty good money.
they do. Yeah, they certainly do. Okay. But I think that there's that sometimes a misnomer where it goes around, well, they're just not good enough to get into the NHL. And that's valid. But, the questions that I start to see is like, you got a Charles Legault who he's pretty close to NHL ready. You've got Nystrom, who we've seen is NHL ready. Um, the other there's that small player Dominic Fensori. He's been marinating in there for a while. I don't know if I don't think he'll ever crack this lineup. Just don't ever
No.
see it.
Well, see, the thing that holds Fensori back, and I hate to say anything negative about Dominic Fensori because I absolutely love watching him play.
Yeah, sure.
His dad follows me too. I actually
Oh,
messaged his
cool.
dad one time, and I was like, "Your son has the best skating I think I've ever seen. Like
Whew.
I
Yeah.
like legitimately like I've never seen someone skate that well." The thing that holds him back is something he can't control, and that's his size. There's a lot of things that it's kind of like on the inverse of what we were talking about earlier with Stankoven. Dominic Fensori is such a good skater that at the American Hockey League level, he can outskate just about anybody else. So it's easy for him to defend against people who are bigger, rangier than him, and maybe better at possessing the puck than most of the league and everything like that. He shuts them down easily because of how well he can skate. It doesn't matter how big you are. If you can't outskate someone like him, you're never going to get around them. At the NHL level, that gets significantly harder. That's the only thing I've ever worried about with him not making it in the NHL in general. If he were going to, he would probably have to go somewhere with not a very deep defensive depth chart, and Carolina is not that place. I hate saying anything negative about him because I really like him, and I don't even think it's negative. It's just he can't control it. God said you will be a short king, and that was that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here, no, he won't. But Dink is so long off, you don't have to worry about him. Legault and Nystrom, it's good to hold on to both of them because provided that they don't bring him back, when Chatfield's deal is up, that's two guys that you have to potentially replace that one spot. You create some healthy competition. So they're actually in a pretty good spot there as far as moving guys up there. And
Yep.
then shortly after that, before you know it, Walker's deal is going to be up because he'll have 2 years left after
Yep.
Chatfield's done.
Yep.
So then Badinka's timeline actually kind of lines up with that. Then you're in the same situation where you have two players that are competing to, so that way you're not making too much competition. You have two players competing for that particular spot.
Yep.
So it's not that I'm not worried about actually. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah. I think it's a good point. Yeah, I wanted to bring up Nadeau because even though I think that to your point, I don't know if you can hear that somebody's mowing their yard. Can you hear that?
Vaguely, barely. I can
Hold on one
barely
second.
hear it.
Hold on. My neighbor is a workaholic. I love him. He's super
Mhm,
helpful, but he's a workaholic. Doesn't stop.
mhm.
But I wanted to. The reason I'm bringing up Nadeau, and even though that he has really improved defensively in his game, Brandon, do you think that he could be a trade chip? Let's just be honest. Can he be a trade chip?
Only if it's a blockbuster. Otherwise, I wouldn't let him go. I mean, this is someone we're talking about that trains with Sidney Crosby, and Sidney Crosby said, "If I had your shot, I wouldn't pass the puck to me either." That's Sidney
Hmm.
Crosby telling him
Yep.
that. And your
Yeah.
connections to Pittsburgh, you definitely know that that statement's got some gravity to it. Um, Potentially, yeah, but if it's for anything short of deals that I think are off the table, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
There's got to be some way to get him in here because it's like okay, Seth Jarvis, for example,
Mm,
who my friend Matthew P, he's been drawing parallels between Jarvis and Nadeau. That's something that there's no amount of redundancy there that's bad. The more players you have like that, the better. But I think that I think there's some sort of way you can get him in, and it may just be something that presents itself because one of the things that got Jarvis in was Niederreiter getting hurt.
mm,
And that's when he started getting all the looks he got. And that's when people started realizing, like, I knew he was good. I didn't expect him to turn into what he turned into, though.
I don't know if anybody did.
I was like, he's probably the most skilled guy on the team now. So it's like, I mean, other than Aho, but like, and even then, I still think ultimately, like God given talent, I think Jarvis is number one. Aho's game is a little bit more complete, a little bit higher hockey IQ, but as far as like you go out there and play, Jarvis is number one at that. Um, I think that opportunity is just going to be something that has to prevent itself or present itself. And as we saw with how this season started, it probably will. And I think that's how he gets in. And then at that point, you probably have to make a hard decision, like putting somebody on waivers or something like that. I think that's how that happens. But I
Mm,
personally would not let him go for anything other than a blockbuster.
yeah, gonna be interesting. So
Yeah, that no, this is like I'm not nearly as upset as I was yesterday when I took the time to think about stuff and I'm like,
good.
okay, I never thought that they were going to win the cup this year anyway. Why am I getting upset? Like they didn't spend any of their assets yesterday except on Nick Delorier, and that one might not even, that that's a conditional pick. It might not even end up mattering.
Yeah,
Um, I I was saying yesterday that I'd never been less excited for the playoffs, and I don't feel that way anymore. I don't.
good,
I mean, I
good.
have to like kind of think about, okay, I have to remember when I was sitting in 105 for $85 surrounded by road fans from Columbus. Not New York, not
Yeah,
Boston,
yep.
Columbus.
Good.
And it's nothing like that.
I'm here to be your therapy partner.
Yeah, it's like I know I tend to doom a little bit more in the last year than I did when I first started the channel and everything like that. I think the reason it's hard for me in that situation is I remember I didn't go to a game for like 2 years.
Mm,
Between the last game I went to before the one I'm about to talk about was the New Year's game against Montreal in 2020, and then we all know what happened after that. And I just never made it down to one. Opening night 22-23, I was there.
mm-hmm.
And the moment they came out for warm up, I texted my dad and I said, "This team is special. Like that's the year I thought that team was going to get it done."
22,
Even at
23. Yeah,
Yeah, even after Svechnikov got hurt, I'm like, nope, not worried about it. Like this sucks that he's hurt, but I think they'll still get it done. And Mackenzie McEachran came in and decided to be a playoff legend for a little while. That was
yeah,
really cool.
yeah.
But it's like that season like really just kind of took a chunk out of me a little bit.
Sure.
And then 23-24, I never got really excited about that team, even though it was on paper, it was great. And then this last season, I knew that it was it was a retool transition year and they got further than was expected. So I'm like, all right, can't be upset with this result. And then this year I was hoping, okay, maybe now, it's just fan fatigue is a real thing.
Yeah,
And
for
I know
sure.
that you and I both care a lot about the team. And there's a lot of people out there who care a lot about the team. And a lot of the arguments and, negative discourse we see, it's driven by it's not driven by hate, it's driven by passion. It's driven by wanting to see the team win and succeed. So that's one of those times where, like yesterday, when I was sitting there watching the game and I'm sitting there thinking about it, and I'm like, they're playing really well. The This is not the worst outcome. Is it the one that we want at the moment? No.
Yeah,
But if there is going to be a team that proves everyone really wrong, especially like the national pundits and everything,
yeah,
if there's a team that is going to do that, it would be this one. So, if they're going to do that, it would just be so fitting because the 2016 wasn't supposed to win. There was all the narratives out there. Oh, they were in a weak division. That's the only reason they got as far as they did. Buffalo was missing 4 of their defensemen. Blah blah blah. Every excuse in the book to say it was a fraudulent cup, and they still did it. And then you're 20 years later. Strong possibility you see the Oilers in the Stanley Cup Finals again.
mm,
And how fitting that would be if
to get that matchup.
that would just be that would be all the aggravation and everything like that.
Yeah,
At that point, I've been like, you know what? It was worth it.
yeah.
Absolutely worth it.
And I'll say it this: when I was watching the game, because I probably wasn't as upset as maybe you were, because I knew that you were pretty irate. You
Yeah,
admitted that, and that
I
listen,
was. I was irate. Yeah.
and hopefully that's okay to bring up publicly. But
Oh no, everyone knew.
it's
Everyone knew.
it's fair. But I was just thinking, as that game finished up, as the clock hit 0, and Blake had a really great game, and And he had a last beautiful goal that and really pretty much just put that nail in the coffin to end it 6-3. I was just like, this is it's a really good feel good maybe moment to kind of take the pressure off and, kind of bring the fans back down, kind of back down to keep their feet on earth. And so I was really glad for that because I went, it could be way worse. And I know I said that earlier, like I'm still one of those people, like I'm so glad that this team's competitive and then been in the playoffs, and I'll probably stay that way. But come playoff time, I know things can change because things will heat up again. Emotions will again run high. And then we'll see what happens if they if they can get on a heater, because if Freddie starts game 1 and he can get on a heater.
Yeah, I'm still hoping Bussy's going to start game 1, but it's like
Yeah,
now it's a question.
I was trying to throw that out there.
Yeah, now it's a question though, just because Freddie's played well, so it's
He's really played well.
So it's not a question because someone fell off; it's a question because someone elevated their game, which is always a better situation to be in.
Yeah.
So, I feel significantly better about it now than I did. See, I wish I could have Griff's mentality about things because that dude he's so positive, and I envy how positive he is about things. He's just he's just so like he's like, all right, well, on to the next thing, let's go, let's do it. And he's just like so motivated all the time. I mean, part of that comes from the fact he was a drill sergeant, so it's like he's always got that mentality of, all right, no sulking, let's do it.
Let's go. Yeah.
Whereas me, I was an intel guy. I'm like, everything is bad and the world is a horrible place. Like that's one of those things you can see the dichotomy between us. That's like he
remember those early shows. That was a really funny dichotomy. It was really funny.
That's always been the funny thing about it. He's a motivator. I'm sitting there. I'm like, he's like looking at what's right in front of him, and I'm looking at the world as a whole, going, "Oh man, why do we exist?" Like, we're awful.
Seeing some of his posts just makes me want to run through a wall.
Yeah, no, and that I literally would go to war with that guy. I literally would. Like, it's like, and he's already done that, so he knows how it works.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It's like I need to maybe have his mentality about it a little bit more. Yesterday it was just really difficult too because I was expecting a letdown and then I got one, and then I'm like,
yeah.
Now I'm like starting to be like, all right, cool. We know what happened yesterday. That's done. That's in the rearview mirror. Nothing you can do to change it. Yep. Now you say, okay, this sucks. Put it behind you. What do we do next? What's the path forward?
Yeah.
And now we kind of know.
Yeah. Fair. Well, listen, man, I appreciate you having me on here with you.
Dude, this was a very, very, very fun discussion. I enjoyed this. We will do this again soon.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I'm sure Chris would want to join next time too. I'm sure he would.
Yeah, I should have asked if you wanted to bring him on too. I didn't even think about that though.
That's all right.
Chris too, obviously. So it's like when I'll tell you what I was thinking about doing. I would like to have a really, really big like playoff marathon mega stream right before it starts.
Okay.
So what I was thinking I was going to do a 2-day thing with that. I was going to do on the first day, I was going to have the series forecast, like with the stats and everything like that. Like you've seen how I do in the past. I'm going to do that. That'll be one day. And then the next day I want to have like a marathon stream, and I want to bring you, Aaron, Katie, Rachel Barkley, Alan from Caniac Sessions.
Yeah.
You and Chris.
Yeah.
Tom Ray. I was just going to hit up everybody and be like, hey,
we'll do it.
Block some time off, and then
I'll speak for Chris on that. Yeah, we'll do it. That'll be fun.
I'm going to need a lot more of these because I am parched, because I went to the gym before this and I did like a bunch of rows and deadlifts and stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's not enough of these to keep me going. I'm gonna need an IV that day, but we're gonna do it.
Is that electrolyte? Is that electrolyte drink?
No, this is just a regular Fiji water. I chugged a Gatorade right after I got out of the gym and everything like that. And dude, like I'm sitting there like I'll leave on this, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I feel so good about myself, like how much better shape I'm in and everything like that.
You look good.
I'm getting all thank you. I'm getting all muscular again and everything. And this dude walks in there and he looks like a damn semi. This guy is just. I was like, how do you walk? Like, you look like an upside down pyramid, bro. What do you do? And And I'm like, I'm never gonna be like that. Oh my god! And this guy's going in there, and he goes in there and he's doing overhead pulls with the rope,
Yep.
and he maxes out the damn weights on it, and then he puts 2 10-pounders on top of it and does it. And he's like not doing it fast either. He's like doing it slow, and I'm like, what the? How do you do that?
That's different universe. I told you I'm 5'8", 155 pounds. So I'm curling max 20, 25s, and I
Yeah,
don't
but
care
yeah, but
because
see, a guy like you're built to be fast though. Like
I don't.
that was
Yeah,
that was yeah.
because so God built me that way. So I just accept it and I just kind of embrace that. I would like to say Bruce Lee look. I'm not quite there, but
Yeah.
that slender look. But yeah, man, let me know, and I'm sure we'll jump on there. It'll be a lot of fun. I really appreciate you having me on, and I'm glad. Hopefully, most people are feeling as you are today. Because listen, man, the other thing, this team does not suck.
No. It's never sucked since Rod's been
It's a
coaching.
good
It's
team.
never sucked at all.
It's a good team. So yeah, and I'll continue to support it. Oh, and last thing I'll tell you is I am probably I'm splitting a half season ticket package with my buddy,
Mhm.
and I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I went to the arena the other day. I'm picking out seats right now, and so I've never done that, never been able to afford it, but I want to now. I'm like I want to be able to go to. I want to be able to get to like 10 to 12 games a year.
Mhm.
I want to be able to do that. I've always wanted to. And my wife, that's the thing is my wife wants to go. And so that's
Mhm.
just extra motivation because going with her just makes it way more fun, for me because she gets into it.
Mhm.
So I love it. So yeah,
Yeah, and the other cool thing about it is it's like I only make it to about 4 or 5 games a year, but now I live closer. When I
yeah,
have the financial means to do so, I might try and do the season ticket thing, but I'll have to split. I'll see about splitting it with Griffin AB or something like that because
it's
I'm not
worth
going to make
it.
them all anyway. And but I live closer now, so it's a lot easier. Like I don't know if you've ever been up to the Washington metro area before, but I had to strategically time when I left, and I was like, I have to get past the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico like now, or I'm gonna get stuck here.
Yep.
It's like you're on an island at that point. I was like, go, 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 and I'd get out of there and I'd take a deep breath and I'd be good. The other downside of this, though, but I've been good about regulating myself on it. I have a Bucky's near me. So every time I go on 95, not near me, but like every time I go on 95, it's like they're in my face. It's like, come get beaver nuggets, Brandon. You know you want to. And
Yes.
I'm like, and I have to like sit there and just like, no, stay away from me,
You
heathen.
got to put the
No.
blinder right here,
Yeah, it's
going
just
down,
like a
going up 95.
driving with one eye open. Don't do that, kids. I don't recommend that. But like I'm sitting there and I'm like just trying to ignore it. But the thing that deters me from going there is like it looks like a war zone when I drive past it, and there's like backed up all the way to the exit. I'm like, no, no, I'm good.
Good willpower. Love it. And like I said, man, hit me up. Hit me up. I'll coach you through it. It's so funny because the last thing I'll say too is I'm sorry boring everybody with this, but I only eat 2 meals a day. I've always been pretty disciplined like that, and and then one of the things that I do every single night is I eat a red apple every single
Mm-hmm.
night, and it's just I've been really fortunate with the way that I've been built. Never ever had kind of a weight problem. Never, again, it's just been genetics, really, and but at the same time, it's hard to be disciplined with your food. The food is the hardest part.
Yes.
No, not even close. That's the hardest part. So yeah, I get it, man.
Yeah, it's
Bucky's
it's
is
been
good.
difficult, but I want to be down to 220 by the time the playoffs start, and I was 229.2 last time I weighed myself, so totally doable. I also don't want to lose it too fast because there's been times I lost it too fast before, and I just put it right back on, so I don't want to do that this time. So far so good there.
You're a handsome man. So
I appreciate it, sir. So are you. You know what you're talking about. You might want to get your prescription updated though for your glasses.
All right, brother, man. Thank you so much for having me.
It has been an absolute pleasure, sir. I will see you later.
Yeah, man. Sounds good. Later.
Peace. All right, that was fun. It was also therapeutic. So I would answer the comments, but it's going on 1 hour, 42 minutes, 44 seconds, and ticking. So I am going to go relax because I have, let's see, almost 2 o'clock. I can eat at 6, so I got 4 more hours until I can eat. Today is Saturday. What time's the Bush race? Or the O'Reilly Auto Parts race, as they call it now. Oh, it's not until 7:30? Oh, wait. Oh, wait, it's... Oh, trucks at Phoenix's today. And then there should be some spring training baseball on, too. And let's see what else the NHL is doing today. Other than the Canes playing at 10, which I probably won't be able to stay up and watch because I got to work tomorrow. Oh, Washington, Boston are playing right now. And then New York and New Jersey, or as I like to call it, Hitler versus Stalin at 3 o'clock. Okay. I can go for those. That'll work. All right, let's see. Where is it? All right, everybody. It has been fun, but I am going to... Where'd it go? I'm going to go ahead and call it a stream. Thank you very much for joining me and Darren. It was a blast. And I will, now that I've had time to think about it, had this conversation today and all that type of stuff, try to be a little bit more positive about things, because it could be a whole lot worse. I want them to win as bad as anybody else, but I will see you guys later.